My name is Justice and I'm a graphic designer, and I'm going to be teaching you how to use the basics in Illustrator. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is learn how to use the shape tool. So the shape tool gives you a wide range of options. If you hold down and click on the option key, you're going to get a bunch of different types of shapes, and with those shapes you can create other shapes, but we'll get onto that a little bit later. We have the rectangle tool, the rounded rectangle tool, the ellipse tool, polygon, star, and the flare tool. But right now we're going to focus on the main 5 basic shapes. If you hover over the rectangle tool and then let go, it'll have you selected on the rectangle tool. So when you hover over your page, you'll notice that I'm not on the right layer. so, and when you click and hold down on your canvas, you'll notice that it starts to make a shape. You can move anywhere around on your canvas, and you'll notice from the point that you started from to the point that you end is where it goes. You can use these little anchor points to make your shape bigger, to turn it into a rectangle, or to turn it into a square. Now, you're probably thinking, well, that's not a perfect square. So how do I get this to be a perfect square? So I'm going to delete this shape, and then I'm going to make another one. And what you do is while you're holding down on your canvas, you're going to hold the shift key. When you hold the shift key, you'll notice that the rectangle comes out even throughout, no matter what. But if you let go of the shift key, then it goes back to being whatever shape you want it to be. It goes back to being more fluid. But if you hold down on the shift key, it turns into a perfect square. And the same can be said for the rest of the shapes. We'll move on to the rounded rectangle tool. Now this one's a bit strange, and I'll show you why. The reason why this one is a bit weird is because while I'm assuming that the purpose of this tool is to make it a bit quicker for those who don't know how to make rounded edges on a regular rectangle. So you'll notice that in this rectangle tool, and it's the same with this, if you hold down shift, it'll turn into a perfectly shaped type of circly square. If you'll notice, if we zoom in a little bit closer, we'll notice that the edges are rounded, but I'll show you why I feel like this particular option is a bit redundant. If we pull out our regular rectangle tool, you'll see that it has sharp points. And I'll show you another tool that would be useful to you. It is your direct selection tool. And this tool here will take the edges of your shape, and you can have them more round or you can have them more pointed. Just by clicking on this little white dot right here, or any of these white dots, you can take these here, move them in and make a circle, or move them out to have more of a point or less of a point. This shape basically is that without having to do that. And you can make this pointed if you wanted to. It's just quicker. I'm going to zoom back out. All right, next we're going to move on to our ellipse tool. Now this one does exactly what you think it does. It creates circles, ovals, really weird oblong type shapes. And just like last time, if you hold down on the shift key, it creates a perfect circle every time. And if you let go, then it turns into an oval that you can flip, turn, and move any type of way. And it's basically the same, not a lot to show there. It's basically just like all the other shape tools. You just click and drag. Next, I'm going to show you another shape tool, which is our star tool. I'm going to skip over the polygon tool because it's basically the same, and it's basically the same as the other shapes. Move it up and down. You can click and drag the points. You hit shift to keep it even, but I'm going to move on to this one because this is the most interesting. So here's our star, and you can notice that it looks a little crazy. Let me undo that. Alright, here's our star. That's the kind of star that you're going to see when you're using Illustrator. You'll notice that it has 5 points, and you can scale it any which way you want, like the rest of the shapes. Now, what makes this one interesting is sometimes in design, you're not going to want a shape that's this generic. I mean, you could use it, but most of the time you want to make it look a little different, change the shapes of it, move the points around, and I'm going to show you how to add more points. And you can actually do this, I believe, with any of the other shapes in the shape lineup. And what you do is, I'm going to delete this one. When you create a new star, while you're clicking and holding it, now you still have to be holding it, you're going to press any of the up keys or the down keys. You can even press it so far down that it turns into a triangle. Now there's other ways that you can get the triangle, but I see that it's most easiest to do it this way without having to cut things in half and expand them, which we'll be learning about later. Now, the downside to that is it turns into that shape no matter what. So you always have to make sure that you go back and reset it and go, which can sometimes be a little bit of pain in the butt. There we go. Back to our original star. And this is really good for, say, if you're making like a banner type logo or something like that, and you want it to have a little bit more pizzazz around the edges versus it just being round, you can make it where it could be like a circle, but has those edges around it. And we'll get to something like that later. I feel like that's a little bit more advanced. We'll get into logo making at a later time. All right. Learn how to use, in my opinion, the next easiest tool. We're going to go back to our circle tool because that's just my preference. I want to use a circle, but you can use any shape. And we're going to create our first shape. And we're going to learn how to use our gradient tool. So, usually how I start is I go ahead and hit this little box right here that says gradient. All right, so now you have your first gradient, and then if you'll notice, it's black and white, and we're going to keep it like that for a little while, and I'll show you why. So it's in a gradient, right? But maybe that's not quite how you want it. Maybe you want more black, a little less white. Maybe you want more gray. Where you're going to hit this tool right here, your gradient tool, and it gives you this little bar. And this bar kind of indicates where it is that the colors that you've chosen, in this case black and white, where they're going to fall. So you can see right now it's on a horizontal axis. So our line is just going to sit perfectly in between. So we can have more black, we can have less black, we can have more white, we can have less white. But see, those changes seem a little bit dramatic, don't they? So you're going to want to take this little diamond shape and you can move around the gray parts so that way the changes aren't as dramatic. Now, in addition to that, you can move this little cursor. You can move this little cursor around by clicking and dragging where you want it to go. You can move anywhere on this page and it'll start from your white and end on the black in any direction. See, it starts from the white and ends on the black. Anything that's on the left side is where you're going to start with, and anything that's on the right is where you're going to end. All right, so we want to add some color to this, right? What I do is I usually just, might not be the proper way, but it's the quickest way for me. I usually just pick a color from the swatch and then it puts me on another colorway, we're going to call it for right now. And then I'll go over here, select whatever color, the actual color I want. Let's say blue. I like blue. So we have this nice light blue, and then we'll do the same for our black. And I'm going to go with pink. Turn gray. Alright, I'm going to choose this nice light colored pink. You can see we can move it anywhere on the screen. It's actually pretty easy. There's not a lot. There's not a lot to the gradient tool. You can make really beautiful gradients using this tool. And you have different types of gradients. You have your linear gradient, your radial gradient, and your freeform gradient. So we're going to move to our radiant gradient. You'll notice that it moves your gradient to the middle. And your little point right here, it can either make it bigger, it can move the direction of, it could switch from the pink being on the outside to the pink being in the middle. And this is kind of great when you're trying to make something look more 3D, because I can't think of the word that I'm looking for right now. You probably wouldn't use these colors, but as you could see, it almost looks like something is in the middle, it's in the distance almost. And if you make the right colors, if you use the right colors, you can make something look really realistic in Illustrator. But then we're going to start getting into the mesh tool and things like that, and I'm going to show you guys that in another video. Now we have the freeform tool. You could put your gradient anywhere on the screen, moving it back and forth, and you can notice it almost looks like an egg. It looks like you're creating like light in a certain area. So it looks like the light is hitting from above and it's a little bit darker down here. And I think that that's really cool. Now, I don't use this particular tool as much because for me personally, I don't have much of a reason, but I'm sure for a lot of you, you guys could find a lot of really cool reasons to use this particular option on Illustrator. All right, and that's our gradient tool. You how to use your eyedropper tool, and again, this is probably one of the easiest tools that you can use in Illustrator. And then as we move on, we're going to get into more advanced skills. So we're going to make ourselves a shape, and our shape, of course, is still a gradient. So I'm just going to go ahead and change that to pink, and then we're going to make another shape, and I'm going to change that to darker pink, and then one more shape. And I'm going to change that to blue. I guess I have a thing for pink and blue today. And we're going to do one more. And I'm going to do black. I probably don't even need to make this many different colors. And what we're going to do is we're going to change this black to all these different colors right here. Now, we could do that the hard way and, go to this shape, figure out what color it is, and then copy and paste it into this circle here. But no one wants to do that. That takes too long. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on our black. Make sure you have your black selected. And then you're going to go to your eyedropper tool down here, and then you're going to click on the color that you want it to be. It could be pink. It could be that dark pink. It could be blue. You could click on the canvas and it turns it white. You could click outside of the canvas and it turns it gray. You can literally click on anything within this parameter and it will turn into whatever color you want it to be. You could click all up inside of this little box right here and it'll change it to every color in the rainbow. You could click pretty much anywhere. And that's literally how you use it. Now, here's the fun thing. If you click here, right, and you turn that back into our original gradient, and then you go back and select the circle that we were changing into all those colors, and you use the eyedropper tool on that, it will also turn that into the color of the gradient. And this is really useful when I'm trying to use something as a place marker. Like I know that I want this particular gradient, and I don't know a particular logo that I'm designing, right? And I'm like, okay, I want this particular color. And sometimes when I do this, I don't have to go back and find those colors that I use because trying to get a hold of the colors that you just used is a lot of the times a pain in the butt when you're selecting gradients because you can't just click on this and find out what color that is. It sets you back to black, so it doesn't show 2 points where I can just click on and find those colors. um, Illustrator, the people, Adobe, the people who make this, please make an option where I can go back and find those colors. That would be very useful. Just put two little dots. Make one, that pink, make one that blue, and then we'll all be, it'll make life much easier. But they haven't done that yet. So I managed to turn that white. I need to turn that back pink. And now I just turn the whole thing white. Oh, guess what? I can use my color picker and go back and change it in case something like that happens. And it does sometimes. Um, so that's basically how you can use this color picker tool. And you can also use it with your text box as well. So say you have this text, right? And it automatically inserts, I have it set to automatically insert lorem ipsum. Yours might do the same as well. And we have this text box, correct? And I want to change the font to, I don't know, that, right? That's the last thing that I used recently. And so now we have this, and then now we have this plain text. If I go and select all that text and use the color picker, it changes the text as well as the color. Now you won't notice the color here because they were both black, but say I turn this text here blue. Now that it's blue, I can go here and change this to not like that. I don't know. I don't know why I did that. I can go here, click on this, and now it's also blue. This is also useful when you are creating something and you don't know what font you used. I'm usually familiar with most typefaces, but look, I'm not perfect. I don't know them all. So it makes it really useful where you're like, okay, I don't know if this is Futura, but I need this font, so I'm just gonna click it. It also makes working a lot faster. Usually what I do during my working process is I have all the colors and the fonts that I'm planning on using in the design over here on the side on another layer. And as I need them, I might have something typed up in here. I might have something typed up inside of the canvas, but I haven't quite changed the font yet. I'm just trying to get everything in place. And as I get everything in place and things are where they need to be, then I just come over here, I start changing the colors, I start changing the fonts, and everything kind of goes into place all at one time. But again, we'll get more into that as we get further into our lessons. Alright, so next we're going to start getting into some more fun stuff. So here we're going to go back to our shape tool, which you'll be using that a lot. And you're going to create shapes. Now here I'm going to be using a circle, and we're going to be putting a bunch of random circles on screen. And I'm going to show you how to create new shapes with shapes. So here we're going to try to create kind of like a cloud. So we had a bunch of different little circles and things like that here, and I'm just trying to arrange them all in a I don't know, in sort of like a little cool way. All right, so we have something that kind of looks like a cloud, right? Um, Yeah, I know I'm trying to like perfect the cloud, but whatever. Okay, we'll just leave it how it is. Now you'll notice that this is a collection of a bunch of different circles. So it's going to make it hard for us to move it around unless we do this the entire time, which is okay, but what if we want it to be a whole shape because we want to have a bunch of different clouds that aren't all attached to each other? Now you could do it this way and hit Command G, and now it's all grouped together. So when you click on one, you're clicking on all of them. But maybe you don't want to do that. You want this to all be one shape. Now, what you're going to do is go to this Pathfinder area right here, and if you don't see this right there or within these top bars right here, you're going to go to your window tool and find your Pathfinder button and make sure it's checked. Now mine isn't checked because it's already on here, but if I were to check it, it's going to bring it down right over here. And you're going to use this particular button right here, which is to unite all the shapes. Even though this is grouped together, these shapes aren't united. They're still different shapes, but they're set in a way, they're grouped together, so that way they can't be moved. But if we unite these shapes, it all becomes one large shape. Now it's no longer a circle, it's this big blobby circle cloud thing that we've created. And if any point you wanted to undo that, you can click Command Z or Control Z if you have a Windows computer, and you can undo it. Now I've moved it a couple times, so it undid a couple different things. It undid me moving it around, and now it's grouped together again, but they're all separate circles. And you can ungroup. I don't remember the shortcut for that, but what I do is I go to Object, Ungroup, and now I can move these circles. So since we're on the Pathfinder tool, I'm going to show you how to use this Pathfinder tool in other ways. I'm going to take this shape and I'm going to conjoin it together again. So now we have a cloud. But what if I don't want these bumps at the bottom of it? We see these little rigid points right here, and I want something that looks a little bit different, right? So what you could do is you can use the line segment tool. And I use this oftentimes to cut things, or when the line segment tool just isn't doing for me, I'll use a box. But I'll show you how to do that later. You can cut it right across where I want it to be. And I feel like that's a little bit too high. So I'm going to take my line segment tool, use the arrow key, and I'm just going to move it down a little bit until I feel like that's about perfect. All right, so I think that that looks good. So I'm going to take my selection tool right here, and I'm going to go back over it so everything is selected, and I'm going to use the Pathfinder tool Divide, and it's going to chop this right on up. Now, when I click off the canvas, or I click on the canvas, I notice that these two things, they're still grouped together, so I need to ungroup them. So you're going to go to Object. You're going to make sure that your shape is selected. You're going to make sure your shape is selected, and you're going to go to Object, Ungroup. And you'll notice that now I can separate these two parts. I just cut them in half. So I'm going to delete that bottom half because I don't want that anymore. And these edges right here are a little too sharp for me. So now I'm going to want to zoom in, and we're going to go to that direct selection tool that we were using earlier, and we're going to make that a little bit more round. See, it made both edges round. So now we have this more rounded little cute cloud shape, or like top of a cupcake or something like that. And that's how you use your shape tool. And you can do that for anything. For more advanced, for something a little bit more advanced, let's take a rectangle tool. And let's say that we wanted to, I don't know, create like a little hut at the top of this rectangle, right? So we're going to take, we're going to make another shape. We're going to do a circle, and we're going to try to line this up with our box. Now, I didn't do a very good job lining that up. The circle is way too big, but that's okay. We can fix that. We're going to take this circle. I'm going to hit Shift so it remains a perfect circle because I want the dome of this to be perfect. And we're going to line this right on up. And we're going to try to center it. That circle button that you see in the middle, that little blue piece right here, that is, it shows you the center of your shape. So usually what I do is I find the center and I line it up with here, and you'll notice that it'll auto lock onto the middle. And if you don't have that set up, you can just go to View and then snap to pixel or snap to grid. And usually that's the easiest way to do it. I don't have it snapped to get grid right now because I don't need it. But if you need it to snap to those to the sides, then that's how you can do that. All right, so I'm going to make this bigger. I'm going to line it up perfectly with that edge. I'm going to line it up perfectly with that edge. And now we have this, this nice rectangle shape that has a dome at the bottom. And we can do the same by clicking and dragging. We can take this shape right here, and if you hold Alt, if you hold the Alt key, then you can drag this down, line it up just like you did with the other one. And now we have this really cool bar right here. So, with rounded edges. Now, this is all different shapes. If I were to move this, now it's all messed up and it's not aligned anymore. But we're going to hit Command Z and undo that, right? And we all want this to be one whole shape, right? So this is where we're going to click on Command Unite. And now we have one shape. They've all united into one big thing. And this is really great for, say, you're trying to edit a font, right? Like it looks almost how you want it, but you want to round out maybe the edges or something like that. This is a great way to add a little bit more pizzazz to one of your designs, so that way you're not just using generic shapes. This is a really great tool because it takes generic shapes into something that's more fun. You can use it for other things. This could look like a click button for a website or something like that, and you could put in the middle, click here. But again, we're getting into more advanced things, and we'll learn how to do things like that later on in another lesson. Use this other really cool tool, which is the smooth tool. Now, if you don't see the smooth tool on your screen, you wanna hold down on I believe it starts off with the pencil tool, and then just like with the shape tool, you're gonna click and hold, and you're gonna move down to the smooth tool right here. So first things first is you're going to want to make sure that you have your shape selected. And I actually made this mistake when I was first learning how to use the smooth tool. I just thought that the button was broken, or I don't know what the heck was wrong. So for at least a good 2 years, I had never even used it because I didn't realize that you needed to have uh, I didn't realize you needed to have your selection selected. Yeah, I know that seems kind of silly, but yeah, I made that mistake. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on that while it's selected, and you're basically just kind of going to go draw around and basically kind of like in the shape that you want it to be in. I'm going to undo that because I did that wrong there. Because we just want to smooth this particular section out. We don't want it to like bulge out like it did before. And sometimes you really have to zoom in order to get on those areas that you need smoothed out. Um, you know, just how you want it to be. And I want it straight, so you can see that I'm kind of moving it in a straight direction. And you can see already that that point has gone from being really sharp to being really smooth. And basically, we just keep doing this until we get it the way that we want it to be. And so we're going to move down, and we're going to continue. Down and continue smoothing the shape right on out. And it takes a lot of clicks, so I might not get it perfectly just to save time, but you'll notice that as we go on, it's going to keep getting smoother and smoother. See, just how we made that perfect straight line right there? And I don't know what's going on with this particular edge right here. But you know, that's okay, because we're going to try to cheat this. Let's see if we can cheat this and make that side straight. This is what I was talking about. Sometimes I'll use the line tool, and sometimes I'll just use the square. I find that sometimes using that is easier because I can see the edge of the square. So I'm going to create a little box rectangle right here, and then I'm going to make it a different color so I can see what it is that I'm doing. And I'm going to line it up right where I think it should line up at. I'd say about right there, all right? And we're going to make sure that both of these are selected, and we're going to go back to our properties if that's where your Pathfinder is found at, and we're going to divide that right on up. Oh, do I not have both selected? All right, so yeah, we're going to divide that, make sure that they're both selected, and then we're going to ungroup these images. And you can see, I'm not sure if you can see that on screen because they're such close colors, but you'll see that they've divided. Now that we've ungrouped it, I can delete that. I can delete that. And now we have a smooth edge, but you'll notice that there's a little point at the bottom. Well, guess what we can do with that point? We can take our smooth tool, make sure that our shape is selected, and we can bump that right on out. There we go. And one more little point that we need to get rid of. But usually kind of the main goal is to kind of get rid of those extra points. Now, not always, because you'll notice that a lot of these do already have like points there. Really, no, the main goal really is just to make sure that it's as straight as possible. And you'll see that this J right here, if I go back to my layers, is just like this other J right here. And that's how you use that tool there. So I know I've been calling this shape right here a J, and I guess technically it is, but I actually converted this to a shape. And I'm going to show you right quick before I end this tutorial how you do that. So I'm going to delete these shapes right here, and we're going to take out our text tool box right here. And I'm going to change this to just any generic, we're going to change this into something a little bit more generic. Oh, I'm going to type this. I was using script fonts earlier. Right, so we're just going to turn it to Arial Black, and we're just going to type any number of letters, right? So we have a K, right? Now, right now, this is these, I'm texting. So this is just how you type, right? But we want to turn this K into a shape. And basically what that means is so we can like transform and do things to this letter. So it turns it into basically what this is right here. No, not a box, but this box is the shape. We can manipulate this shape. We can drag the corners, we can change the corners, we can do all types of things to this shape, but we can't do that to this K because it's considered text. If we take these corners, it's going to stay where it's at. It's just going to give us more room to type. So what we're going to do is I'm going to delete that other shape right there, and then we're going to go to Object, Expand. And you'll notice that it'll have these little, it's going to have these options here. Object, the object is our K, and fill. That's the color, basically. That's what's the inside of it, the jelly. And we're going to hit OK. And you'll notice that it went from a text box to just a regular bounding box like we would have for the square right here. And that's how you would turn it into a shape. Now you're noticing, well, it doesn't look much different. Well, I can't type on it. Like if I hit my keys, nothing is typing because it's no longer a text box anymore. And if we hit one of these corners right here, we can make it bigger. We can manipulate it. If we hit shift, it keeps it in the shape that it is. And now we can do things with it. We can take other shapes like our circle tool right here, and we can manipulate it and make it a part of the K. So, like I did before when we were showing you how to when I was showing you how to combine shapes, you can do this here. I gotta zoom in a little bit more. You can do this here, line this up. It's not letting me do what I wanted to do. And you can see that it's automatically snapping outside of it. And that's because I believe I have it set to snap to pixel or snap to grid. So I'm going to undo this here just so I can move it where I need it to move right now. Now, I do suggest you have that because it's really useful when you're trying to get it to snap to certain points. But again, we'll talk about that more when we get to other lessons. I know this is still snapping. All right, right there on that edge. So now that we have this lined up, we can select this entire shape right here and we can hit unite. And now we've like rounded out the edge of the K, and we can do that to all those sides. We can do anything to this K. We can add a gradient. We could take one of these tools and stretch this all the way out. And we'll learn more about the pen tools in another lesson. But basically, this K is no longer a K. It is a shape in the form of a K, if that makes sense. But and we'll teach you some more stuff in another lesson. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it was easy. Tell me what you guys think. Please like and subscribe if you want more lessons like this. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.